Good afternoon. My name is Julie Bloomquist, and today we'll be having a lecture on setting up log shipping with DBA tools. Oops. The speaker today is Sandra Stott, and like I said, I'm Julie Bloomquist. We want to thank our sponsors, Quest and Susie. The past summit gives you an opportunity to grow your career and connect with a global network of the data professionals. It's the largest SQL Server conference for the technical professionals. So go to pastsummit.com and look at the opportunities there. If you decide to register for the past summit, you can use, we've got two different discount codes. One will give you a $150 US discount, and the other will give you access, streaming access to all of the past Summit 2017 content. So when you register, use one of the codes. Here's some information on frequently asked questions for new speakers if you want to get involved with the past community as a speaker. And there's some blogs there. The DBA virtual group is seeking speakers for July 25th, September 12th, and 16th. Other openings later in the year and in 2019 exist. If you're interested, just send an email to the DBA volunteer at SQLpass.org. The DBA virtual chapter is one of many virtual chapters. You just take your SQL, your Pass login and associate with the different virtual groups or physical groups if you want. You will just receive emails about upcoming meetings so that you could register. If you attend during the meeting, you're able to ask questions. All of these meetings are recorded and posted on the archive page of the website. SQL Saturdays are a one-day mini conference, and they're held all across the world. Here are the ones coming up for July. You could visit and register at SQLSaturday.com. Usually the fee is very nominal to cover the lunch, but more and more of the SQL Saturdays are having a pre-con or a post-con where you can actually sign up for a one-day class. So become a member of PASS and grow your career. There's the live webinars, there's networking volunteers. There's also some information on jobs right now. And here is information about how to volunteer and also how to recognize a person as an outstanding volunteer. So today, we're going to be talking about the log shipping with DBA tools. Sandra Stott is a SQL Server DBA with an MCSE data platform. Sandra has worked with SQL Server since version 2000 and has over 15 years experience as a DBA. He's worked for a wide range of industries from financial institutes to agriculture. And Sandra, I'm going to pass the presenter over to you.
Thank you. Okay.
And like I said, this is being recorded, and we will be having questions at the end, or Sandra, if you have stopping points, we can look for questions at that time.
Yeah, I'll ask for questions during the session, just before the demos or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay. You see my screen correctly?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So welcome everybody to Simplifying Log Shipping with DBA Tools. The title's a little different than the session name, but it's basically the same. The log shipping has existed for a long time, and the GUI and the process hasn't changed since then. So I basically built a function in DBA tools to make this easier. I'm gonna demonstrate that. So a little thing about me, what's already been said during the introductory slides. I am an MC0 data platform. I work for Waypoint Analytical, which is a group of laboratories who do pretty sophisticated testing on soil and water sampling for like big farms, and we get thousands and thousands of soil samples to be analyzed, and my job is to get that into a database correctly. So I am on Twitter if you want to follow me or send me a PM, and that's my Twitter handle. I occasionally write on my blog things that I find interesting, or new commands or things like that. If you have any questions after the session, you can always send me an email. I will try to answer them as fast as I can. And I am on the SQL Community Slack channel, which is set up by Chrissy Lemaire, and to make it easier for data professionals to communicate with each other in a chat form. So if you are not on that channel yet, go to dbatools.io/slack and put in your email and get an invite. There are thousands of people in there, including MVPs and people who know a lot more. So that will be great help for you in the future. Little agenda for today. I'm gonna go through what log shipping actually is for the people who don't know it. Some good applications for log shipping, some third-party solutions which could work well for you, some alternatives for log shipping, and then I'm gonna show you why this command was actually created, because it needs you need a lot of work to get set up on database. So log shipping dates back to SQL 7, when it was called the poor man's log shipping, because it was basically a job that did a backup of your transaction log, and then a copy job, and then a restore job. And there was no process around it. It was just 3 jobs, and you had to create them manually. Since SQL 2000, Microsoft built a process around that, and then a GUI to make things easier for the user. So there is a primary server which holds your online databases. There's a secondary server where your databases reside, either in recovery or a standby mode, and you can have an optional monitor server that could be on primary or secondary or any other database server you have running. I wouldn't put them on the primary or secondary, because if one of them fails for some reason, you don't have anything to monitor for. So put them outside of your architecture for your log shipping. So what are good applications for log shipping? At first, log shipping was built to create a warm standby. So you have a hot standby and a warm standby, where your hot standby does a failover without any human interaction or a process that needs to be started. And a warm standby still needs some interaction to be initiated. So log shipping is a warm standby. You still need to execute a restore of the latest transaction log to get to a normal state. So that was basically what it was meant for. Another thing that you can do is put your databases in a readable state, so in standby. And that's that's a nice solution if you have reporting services or a ETL process that you want to offload to a secondary server, and you don't want to get any performance issues on your production server. So you can just use a read-only instance of your database somewhere else. And more people want to migrate from one server to another, especially with the new version of SQL Server to 2017. I've seen people use this for migration. You can set up log shipping before any migration would happen, and then pretty easy switch over and have all the data already on your new production server. So this is the kind of applications I see that log shipping is pretty handy for. Of course, with every native solution in SQL Server, there are third-party companies that try to make a better solution for that. So there's Idera SQL Save, Quest Lightspeed, and Redgate SQL Backup, who do a pretty good job to get the logs shipped to another server. So if you want the easy button, you can also use these kind of products to get your log shipping going. So what are the alternatives for log shipping? First of all, you have, because it's a warm standby made for high availability, you can use failover cluster instances, but they only work on the server level. So if something happens with your database, the failover cluster services won't recognize anything of that. So it only works on the server level. You have AGs, so more and more people are using AGs nowadays. And they are basically the next version of mirroring, where all the transactions are being shipped to another replica. That the only downside is if you want to have a readable replica, as far as I know, you need Enterprise Edition, and that can be a costly thing. So if you only have Standard Edition, you can have readable replicas on another node. So, but still, it's a really good alternative for log shipping. I already mentioned mirroring. Back in 2008, mirroring was introduced, and it was pretty nifty. It was pretty nice to have. Unfortunately, Microsoft has deprecated it, and it's not a good idea to use any deprecated features. But yeah, it's still available in SQL Server. So I don't know when they will remove it, but it might take some time. But it's another alternative. And the last one is more based for the readable data on another server. Is replication. You could also replicate your data to another server, but if you have a database where a lot of changes happen, a lot of deletes, inserts, and updates, it could get messy. So I've seen things go horribly wrong with replication. So not one of the first things I would go to for if I wanted an alternative for log shipping. So why did I create a command in DBA tools? Because it's a pain in the butt to set it up. I had one situation where I had to set up about 25 databases, with over a terabyte of data. Not that much data initially, but it took me about a week to set it up, with mistakes happening, and each database had to be done separately. So if you go through the GUI in the SQL Server Management Studio, you have to set up each database individually, and that can take a lot of work, especially if you have a lot of them. So at first you would go to the properties of the database and go to the transaction log tab. You would to get to that little checkbox in the top left corner, and then enable it, and then go to backup settings, which would get this window. You would have to set the network path, and then an optional local backup folder. You don't need that, but then you have to set it to schedule and see if you have to put in compression. So if you want to put in the schedule, you have to say, okay, you want it daily, every 50 minutes, go on and on and on. Then you have to set up your instance. So the first thing would be the choice if I want to generate a full backup. So you would initiate the log shipping on the fly, or use a backup file, or no, you don't need to initialize anything. I already restored the database. In most cases, you would generate a full backup. You would have to go to the host, and then you would have to assign the data and log folder for that host. If I want to connect to a host, he could probably get the default values. So I have to put them in manually here. So then I click OK, and then I go to the copy files. I have to put in that value, get the schedule, get that set up, then go to the restore. Decide if I want to be in a recovery mode, or do I want to have a readable state like the standby. Do I need to disconnect the users? How many times do I want to restore? Then I have to go into schedule again. Then I'm done for the instance. Then I have to set up a monitoring server. That's optional, but I always like to have a monitoring server to at least know what's happening on my log shipping servers. And I have to set up the leads and everything else, and then finally click OK. And then I'm done. So that's for just one database. That's about 40 clicks and about 10 to 15 screens I need to set up log shipping. And that's just for one. Now, that doesn't work with me because I am one of those lazy DBAs that if I do just one thing twice, I will try to automate it. So I'm a active contributor to DBA tools. If you don't know DBA tools, go to dbatools.io. There are so many commands in there for so many possible situations. I cannot imagine it. There's not a command that could solve your problem for anything. You can do about everything on the command line with that module. But I went to Chrissy Lemaire, who is the godmother of DBA tools, and we didn't have a command yet, so I started developing it. It was a lot more work than I first anticipated. I ended up writing over, I think, about 5,000 or 6,000 lines of code, and about 5 functions just for the log shipping. And I finally decided that the agent jobs needed to be, the agent functions need to be created too. So there was about 9 extra functions extra, which was about 3,000 or 4,000 lines of code extra. So it took a couple of months to get this done. But in the end, I had a function that could be executed on a server for multiple databases and be run to set up log shipping, and I could get a cup of coffee and be done with it. So what's the solution? Go to DBA tools and get this going, because I am never going back to the GUI for these kind of things. I rarely use the GUI these days. Only maybe for development, and I'm switching over to Visual Studio. So, are there any questions so far?
Yes. When implementing against an always-on database, do you set up the jobs that take the logs on a third server and connect using the listener?
Wow. I'm not that familiar with AGs.
Right, so that's more of an AG
Yeah.
question. When you set up the jobs to take the logs. So when you set up an availability group, you tell it where you want the database to be replicated to and which servers. So the availability group can manage that for you. So you
Okay.
can have synchronous and asynchronous connections to different servers.
Yeah.
So,
I
so
know that, but
okay,
what has that got to do with a log shipping job?
correct. That's the only question.
Okay. Then let's go to a demo. So let's see if I switch this over correctly. I have a little script. I'm not going to show this. I'm going to show this PowerShell window. So the first thing I want to do is import DBA tools. And I want to set some variables I'm going to use later on for my scripting. You don't have to set these. It's just easier for me to execute some commands. Let's find out which commands we have for log shipping. So we actually have 4. So the get DBA log shipping error, like it says in the synopsis, it returns all the log shipping errors that occurred. So you want to see what is wrong with your log shipping setup, like errors that a backup couldn't be written or a restore couldn't be executed for some reason. That will be logged somewhere in the table for the log shipping configuration, and this function will retrieve those for you. The invoke DBA log shipping is the main command for to set up your log shipping. It does everything for you. You just put in some values and hit enter, and you see a lot of information go on your screen, and you're done. The invoke DBA log shipping recovery helps you to recover those databases. So if you have a secondary instance and you want to fail over to that instance, you can just run this command on all the databases and it will restore it will copy the latest backup, then restore that latest backup, and then disable all the jobs and bring the database to a usable state. So the last one is the DBA test the DBA log shipping status. So during the day, I want to know if my databases are synchronized. Do they have any issues? Are the backups generated correctly? Do the restores work? Those kind of things. If I see anything but all okay in here, I probably go to the get DBA log shipping error and try to investigate what went wrong. So these are the 4 commands we have. Just to show you how many possible parameters are in the invoke DBA log shipping command. There are 94 different parameters in that one command. So every possible setting you can think of to set up the log shipping is in there, including everything you saw in the GUI you put in. You can set in the database, but even more than that, because we wanted to make things easier, and some parameters can make it easier for you to set it up. Let's look at the help of that main command. So let's clear the screen. So the get help command, if you're not already familiar with that, if you write functions in PowerShell, and most functions that are public have help. This is really helpful if you and important that you read these kind of things. So this has all the information about that command. You can see all the parameters, little description, and things you have to take care of, like the privileges is actually put in to make sure that everything works. I couldn't test on all the privileges from the command because it's hard to do if you have a UNC path, like a network path. It's really hard to get those privileges back from that server. So these are all the parameters, and there's a lot of them. And then we have some examples how you can use it. This is actually the least amount of information you need to set up log shipping, and this can be any amount of databases you want. It can be any data, it can be 10, 20, 30 databases. It will just loop through them. So if you assign multiple databases to the database parameter, it will just do the same thing for all the databases. So let's see what is available on my local instance. So let's clear the screen. And I have 3 databases, and one is already in a log shipping state. So the LSDB1 is already a log ship database from DB1. I'm doing this locally on a single laptop. I try to get everything working on multiple VMs, but it was kind of wonky. It didn't really work, and I don't want to run into any issues during a presentation. So, but it works just as well on 2 different instances. The only thing is that I, for the demo purposes, do it on one. So let's execute the command. So what I basically do here is I set my source instance, my destination instance is the same one. I have one database, that's going to be DB2. This is my backup network path. I want to compress, I want to generate the full backup. I have, because I'm doing this in the same instance, I have to do something with a prefix or suffix. You can use secondary database prefix or secondary database suffix to put text before or after the database name. The copy destination folder, and then the force parameter. The reason I use force is because I want to forcefully create items if it's for some reason not working out. So be careful with this parameter. If you already have a working log shipping database and you use this parameter on that same database, it will override your current settings. So be careful with that. So if I hit enter, it's gonna back up the database and try to restore it. And the first job is created and the secondary job, and I'm done. So based on this, I should have a database that's called LSDB2 in a restoring state. So let's look at that in the management studio. So let's rephrase this. And indeed, I have my database. Let's look at the settings on my DB2 database. Let's go to transaction log shipping, and indeed, everything is enabled. Got my backup settings. That's the folder. I have the same folder, the local folder, same as it is because I didn't assign it. Job. Let's the schedule. Everything is set as I expected it. So when I use the, if I don't assign anything for the schedules, the command assumes you want the defaults. So the defaults is every day, 15 minutes, start right away, be enabled, all those kind of things. So that's that part. Let's see if everything is set correctly for the copy file. So I have a copy, and it already created all the folders for you. So you don't have to create all the folders for all the different databases. It will just look at the path created for you. Just as easy. And I'm in no recovery mode, and all my settings are the same. So still every 15 minutes. So that worked out. But I can also do this and create a database that is in standby mode. So let's go back to my PowerShell window and do the same thing again. This time I'm going to use another database, DB3, and the changes that I say, okay, I want to use the standby, and for SQL Server to use the standby option, they need to restore and create a differences file, and that's the standby directory. And for the rest, it's the same command. Let's execute it. Same thing. And we're done. So let's look at one of the folders that has been created. So let's go to the log shipping and look at one of those backup files. So this is the pre-log shipping backup that was generated for me, and this is a transaction log backup. This is one for the other database. I created 3 directories, so everything worked. All the directories have been created, so that works out. Let's see how that looks in DBA tools with their command. And I can see that I have a database lsdb3. It's a normal state and is standby. This is the how SQL Server shows if a database is in standby mode. So now I've set everything up, but now I want to see if everything is working as it should. So I told about the test DBA log shipping status to show the status of my databases. Let's clean this. And the test DBA log shipping status has a simple parameter. So this is the command. So I can say I want it simple. If I don't do that, I get this result. So it returns all the information it can retrieve from those log files. But most of the time, I just want a simple way to see everything, and then I get this result. So right away, I can see that, and that's why I didn't initialize the first database. I did some work before this session, and I already executed something and disabled the jobs. So the backup hasn't run for DB1 in the last 60 minutes. It could be that there's something wrong with my job, or there's something wrong with the network, or there's something wrong with the directories. Somebody might have deleted something or renamed anything. So in this case, I just disabled the backup job and it didn't run for the last 60 minutes. But in one quick overview, I can see if there's anything wrong. In some cases, you don't want to see everything. So you might want to see just what's on the primary. And again, it shows this in a normal, with all the information. But again, I can enter the simple, and then I can see that everything is okay for DB2 and DB3. It's all okay. besides DB3 and DB1. The same can be done for to get only the secondary instance. And as you can see, there hasn't been a restore in the last couple minutes. This is a message that is actually from SQL Server. So I don't do anything special with that. I just return the message. So let's get all the errors. I'm going to clear the screen. And now I have the DBA log shipping error. And if I am correctly, there should be errors in here because I have renamed the backup directory, and I can see like, okay, I couldn't open a device, so I should probably look at that. And there are some other errors that generated. So you can see I couldn't copy anything, couldn't find part of the path, so I renamed some things. So all the errors can be selected from here. I can also do it a little bit easier, doing something like I only want the database and the message. Could make it a little clearer what was happening. To get a quick count, you can also use count. I only have 11 errors. You should have 0, but so I am going to try to initiate a recovery. So if I have a log shipping database, I might run into a situation where I have to recover to the secondary instance, and restoring the latest backup and doing everything manually could be a hassle, especially if you have a lot of databases and you are under pressure. So to make this work, I actually have to run a couple commands to start the jobs. So I have to have at least one backup file, and then and one copy job being done, and one restore, and then another backup, because otherwise there's no information and I couldn't restore. Wouldn't make sense otherwise. I actually use the start DBA agent job that is present in DBA tools, which I can use to just run the job. So everything should be succeeded. Let me check the backup directory. Let's run it again just to be sure. Done. Everything succeeded. And we can try to execute the info DBA log shipping recovery. So with this command, I can just supply one database or any amount of databases I want. So I hope this is gonna work. That all the commands were done. So what it does in the background is it will get the latest backup, because if you want to fill over, you must make sure that your database is already in the last backup has already been executed. So it does a copy, it tries to copy the latest files. If it cannot copy the latest files because your primary server is down, it will try to restore up to that last backup it got to copy. Then it will disable your jobs and then get your database in a normal state. So if I look at my database, I can see, because I did DB2, my database is now in a normal state, and it wasn't before. If I go back to the Management Studio and I do a refresh, I can see that this database is now fully operational as it used to be. Any questions?
Yep, we got more questions. So I think you just kind of covered this. So if you set up the jobs that take the log backups on server 1 and server 1 is down, then the jobs don't run on server 1. So
Yeah.
do you then have to manually bring things up on the second server like you did with your scripts, or could you have that synchronizing and being restored every 15 minutes over on the log ship database?
I hope I understand the question right. If your primary server goes down, there's no way to execute that job. So you can synchronize it using the log shipping recovery command. It will try to run these jobs. So it's not going to do anything on its own. It's just starting those jobs to make sure everything works, because I didn't want to use anything outside of SQL Server to make this work, because that's the normal process you would do. The only extra part I do is that I get the last action is to get it to a usable state. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
So another question is, could he use this method to move databases from SQL Server 2014 to a SQL Server 2017 for migrating to a new server?
Yes, you can. I actually did that a week and a half ago. So the only thing you cannot do with an upgrade, because you're upgrading from a 2014 to 2017, or any upgrade, major upgrade in that case, so for 2012 to 2014 or anything like that, you cannot put your databases in standby mode. And that is because for standby mode to work, you need to have the same version of the database. And until the recovery has taken place, so to a normal state, the database is not upgraded in the background. So it's not compatible with each other. So the only downside is that you cannot put them in standby, but you can put them in no recovery mode just as easy.
Do the commands need to be run locally on the source and destination servers, or are you running from your desktop?
I'm running on my desk. You can run this from anywhere you want. So as long as the SQL Server is able to get to all the shares, because everything is kind of operated on the servers, you can do this from any place you want. That's the beauty of it. I don't have to be on the server. I hate to log in to SQL servers because it takes memory and it's a security risk. So you can execute this from any place you want, as long as you have the credentials to do this.
And if you wanted to do multiple databases, would it be comma separated?
Yeah, I can actually do that. I can demonstrate that. I'm going to type in demos. I don't like to do those kind of things, but I'm going to try. So let's see. See if this works. Could have prepared this, but DB1, DB2. So I'm going to initiate log shipping. First, I'm going to show you that the database is actually in. Come on. Yeah, there it is. So I have these databases. Did I do it correctly? Nope. 2 and 3. Don't type in demos. Don't type in demos. Yeah, it always goes wrong. So this database is in a normal state, and I am going to overwrite this one to be in a restoring state. So I'm going to copy that command, put it in here. So you can see two databases, same server. It's going to be the same settings I used before. And I'm just going to execute it. It will do the same thing I did before. Because I used the -force, it will override everything. So this is the second database. And we're done. So let's see what the result is. And indeed, my previous, let's see if it's still in there. So this was restoring normal and then more normal standby. And now it's all in restoring mode. So if you want to do this for multiple databases, just doing comma separated, and it will loop through them. Anything else?
Does the DBA tools come with the ability to perform a tail? I guess that's a tail backup, a tail log backup on a prod server, for example, then allow the sync to DR, then bring DR online, and after testing, bring prod and DR back in sync? I'm not understanding.
Wow.
We'll be sending you the questions. How's that?
Yeah, that is a tough one. I would have to look into that one. I would have to read the question again.
And it looks like one question had to do with the test-DBA log ship status. If it returns a 0 return code, he was just saying he could automate an execution as a monitor to only get alerts where it's a non-zero. And I think you showed the faileds.
Yeah.
And the session is being recorded and will be posted on our archive page. But I think that's it for questions.
Yeah, the jobs haven't run yet, so I couldn't show that. Yeah, I don't have anything else to show. It's this easy. It's just grab a cup of coffee. The only thing you have to take notice is that the only wait time you have with this command is if you are using the generate full backup or use a backup folder, and the restore takes a long time. So if you have a 500 gig database and a really slow disk, this command can take a while, but that's the only thing that will slow you down with this command. So if you have these kind of big and larger databases, like over 500 gigs, I would just initialize it beforehand. There's a, let's see, log shipping, no initialization. So if you already initialize the databases on your secondary server, you can use this parameter to let the command know that there's not going to be a full backup or restore or anything like that. It's already initialized. It will skip all those steps and then only set the latest settings for your log shipping, and then start backing up your logs and then continue as it should. Some other things I could maybe point out. So you can use an existing full backup, and what it will do is get the latest full backup of your database. You can use a backup folder, so you can point to a certain folder and it will figure out which database to use. And make sure if you run you can use the secondary database suffix anytime you want, but if you run it on the same server, it's mandatory. So it will say, oh, the database is already there. So make sure you have that. And you can change your restore folder if you want something like the log shipping to be somewhere else. Like the restore log folder and the data folder, just assign those. And you can use it generate full backup. Already showed that. These are kind of all the things you can do. If you are not sure if your script works, you can use the what if. If you are not familiar with the dash what if, it will execute the command but not perform any actions. So you will see SQL server, see the command return, it would execute this command right now. I can probably show that as a last thing. So dash what if. So all the white text you see in there is what would happen. Okay, I'm backing up the database, I'm restoring, I'm configuring log shipping for the primary, then for the secondary, then backing up that for 3, do the same thing. So if you're not sure what will happen, use that parameter and nothing will be changed in the background.
Sander, if you leave the dash database option off, will it do all the databases on the server, or is that required?
It is a required. It's a required parameter. Let's see if I can show that. There's so many in here that I kind of lost track. Let's say I can just execute it that way. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to remove the databases and clear the screen. See, it's mandatory, so you need at least put in 1 database to get this working. Otherwise, I cannot generate a folder, and I could put in that you want all databases to be done, but that is risky in some. If you have a big deployment or anything like that, I would want that to be split up, because it can take a long time if you have a large database. So I would probably split up the smaller databases in one section and then do the rest another time. If people really want that, I can probably put that in. You can create a request on dbatools.io of the github.com/dbatools. I can actually show it. You can create an issue for that if you want to get that feature installed, but I don't think that will be used a lot. But if we can probably put that in.
Yeah, I understand that could be risky if you're not sure how long things would take for all the databases. So
yeah, you could run into issues with production, and it still does. If you do a generate full backup option within that, it will probably mess with your production because it's backing up in the midday, or you don't have any control when to execute that. So, but I can see a use case for it if you have small databases and you just want to be done with it.
And he can't tell. You're just using PowerShell? You're not using ISE, are you?
I'm not using the ISE. This is just a PowerShell window. So I can use the ISE to do this, but I don't like the ISE that much. I just run this in a PowerShell command. You don't need an elevated command prompt. You just use the normal one.
Let's see. I'm not understanding this one. Can
Should.
monitor error log live from PowerShell or live in? I mean, log shipping error.
I don't understand the question.
I'm understanding. I mean, the log shipping error logs. I don't understand the question, Mohammed. But that's basically it for all the questions. Like I said, this is being recorded and will be posted on our archive page. And then, Sander, if you want to send any of your slides with me and any of your scripts, that's great. But it looks like everything's on DBA IO.
The commands
DBA
are
tool.
in the DBA tools command.
Yeah.
I can send the demo scripts, but they are really focused on a demo. So you would have to create everything manually and test it out. But you can use any test instance you have to do these kind of things. So I can send you the scripts and the slides. That's no problem at all.
Okay, and we'll get that posted to the archive page as well. Is there anything else that you wanted to?
If there are any questions, send me an email, add me on Twitter, or look me up in the SQL community Slack channel. I'm happy to help. This command needs to work. So if you find any bugs or it doesn't work for your situation, please let me know.
Yeah, Mohammed was just asking about how you do live monitoring for errors.
There is an alert. There is an alert job that actually executes when there's something wrong, so you can monitor on that. And I don't check my instances that often because most of the time it just works, and otherwise I can fix it pretty fast. So I do the test DBA log shipping status a couple times a day. I could write a wrapper around that to email that to me, but that just generates a lot of emails. So I just check it a couple times a day, and most of the time SQL Server just works. So, and that's the case in a lot of features in SQL Server. The job is actually this one. I can show you. There is an alert job that will be triggered if this fails. There is an error within your log shipping. So if I enable this, so that's one thing, and I change some path and I let my job fail, or something doesn't run, this should initiate at some time. No, it doesn't now, but it should alert if your if things get out of sync or anything like that. So you can use that to get any information about your current log shipping status.
Well, that sounds great. We'll be sending the questions over to you, Sanders. And thank you very much for the presentation. And thank you everyone for attending the DBA virtual chapter meeting this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.